My mother died in a city shelter. Pneumonia.
I'm proud of you for trying, sweetheart.
My mother died in a city shelter. Pneumonia. The medication she needed cost $800. I didn't have it. The last time I saw her, she was sitting on a cot with a thin blanket around her shoulders, a cough she couldn't shake. She looked up at me and said, "I'm proud of you for trying, sweetheart." She was proud. She was freezing, and she was dying, and she was proud of the son who put her there. 2 weeks after they buried her, they found me on a bench outside the building where her apartment used to be. 31 years old. The coroner wrote cardiac failure. The real cause was simpler. I stopped seeing a reason to stay warm, but before I tell you how I died, let me tell you how they killed me. My wife's name was Sienna. My investor's name was Tyler. They'd been together since college. I didn't know that. The marriage was a con. I didn't know that either. Sienna married me because I was a self-made property developer with 6 buildings and no lawyer. Tyler funded my expansion with loans disguised as investments. His shell company held the lien on every property I built with his money. Sienna handled the books, diverted renovation budgets into Tyler's accounts through phantom invoices. Money bleeding out the back door while I was on the roof laying shingles. When the market dipped, Tyler called every loan at once. 6 buildings. 1 week, gone. Sienna consoled me that night. By the weekend, she'd moved into his penthouse. My mother had co-signed the first loan, the duplex. When Tyler foreclosed, they went after the co-signer. Grace Cole's savings seized. Her apartment, the 1-bedroom she'd bought after 30 years of cleaning hotel rooms, taken. The last thing I saw before I died was their wedding photo. Sienna in a white dress, holding champagne, in the lobby of my building, the duplex, the one my mother helped me buy, the one I rebuilt with my own hands. I opened my eyes at 6:07 on a Saturday morning, sawdust on my jeans, coffee going cold on the counter, my phone buzzing on the table, text from Sienna, "Hey babe, my friend Tyler wants to meet you. He's an investor. Dinner tonight?" In my last life, I replied in 30 seconds. My wife suggested something. I said yes. That was the whole pattern. This time I read it 3 times. Sienna sold condos. Since when did she know people with investment capital? This wasn't a suggestion. It was a move. I looked at the duplex across the street, the building that would become a wedding venue for my wife and her lover if I did nothing. I called the bank before breakfast, started the refinance on the duplex, told them to remove Grace Cole as co-signer. The officer asked why the rush. "She's done enough for me," I said. "It's time I carry my own weight." Then I drove to my mother's place. She opened the door in her housecoat. Her hands were rough from 30 years of bleach and bedsheets. She asked if I was eating. She asked twice. I didn't stay long. Just needed to see her, warm, alive. On the way out, we stopped at the duplex. I held up my phone. "Smile, Mom," she beamed. "Just a selfie. Mother and son, sawdust, and sunshine." That afternoon, I found a tenant rights firm in a strip mall. The sign said, "Chen Law." Harper Chen looked up when I walked in. Functional blazer, hair tied back, pen behind her ear. I put my contracts on her desk. "I need someone to tell me if these are clean." She read the first page, frowned, read it again. "These are clean, but barely. One bad revision and you'd be exposed. I want you to review anything new that comes across my desk," I said. She studied me for a second. Not warmth, not suspicion, just a careful read. I can do that. No sparks, no charm. Just 2 people who read the fine print. That evening, Sienna and I met Tyler Brooks at a restaurant with cloth napkins and low lighting. The Swiss watch, the handshake, the kind of confidence that comes from never building anything yourself. He talked about vision, scaling up, 70-30 in my favor. Made it sound generous. I heard every word differently. The lien clause dressed as partnership, the call-in provision dressed as protection. The same con that killed me served over $100 steak. My phone was recording in my jacket pocket. When we married, Sienna refused a prenup, said she trusted me. I understood now. No prenup meant half of everything when she filed. Tyler called me buddy. I smiled, nodded, asked questions that made him feel smart. Walking to the car, Sienna took my arm. "See, think bigger, babe." The first time around, I heard encouragement. Now I heard a crane operator. She wasn't lifting me. She was positioning me, putting me exactly where Tyler needed me so he could strip the bolts. I kissed her cheek, told her she was right, went home and backed up the recording to 3 separate drives. Tyler's proposal arrived 2 days later. A partnership agreement for a commercial renovation. An old office building on the east side. Generous terms on the surface. 70-30 split in my favor. Tyler funds the renovation. I do the work. We both profit. I read the contract at my kitchen table and felt my chest tighten. Same structure, same fine print. A lien clause buried on page 9 that gave Tyler's shell company foreclosure rights if any single payment was late. A performance review clause that let him call in the full loan whenever he decided the project wasn't meeting expectations. His timeline, his rules. Last time I signed this without blinking. Sienna had said it looked great. I trusted my wife. This time I drove to Harper's office. It was late when I got there. She was still at her desk, pen behind her ear, coffee long cold. I dropped the contract in front of her. She started reading. By page 3, her frown had deepened into something close to anger. By page 9, she set it down and looked at me. "This isn't a partnership agreement," she said. "It's a loaded gun pointed at your buildings. This lien clause gives his company the right to seize everything if you miss a single payment. And this call-in provision, he can trigger it anytime, for any reason. You'd have no legal recourse." "Can you fix it?" I asked. She stared at me. "You already know this is predatory. You didn't need me to tell you that." I held her gaze. "I need someone I trust to rewrite it." Something shifted in her expression. Not warmth, but a crack in the professional wall. She pulled the pen from behind her ear and started marking up the contract. Removed the lien clause, added IP protections, limited foreclosure rights, inserted a counter clause requiring 90-day written notice before any loan acceleration. We worked past midnight. At some point, she mentioned her father, casually, almost offhand. He'd owned a printing shop, lost it when she was 15. A company offered him a partnership deal with terms he didn't understand. He signed. They took everything. "That's why I do this," she said. Then she went back to the contract. I didn't push. I just filed it away. The next morning, I signed the modified version and sent it to Tyler. He didn't read the changes. Why would he? I was the same trusting Mark who didn't hire lawyers. His arrogance was load-bearing. The whole con rested on the assumption that I wouldn't question anything. He signed, filed it, moved on to planning the renovation. He had no idea the weapon in his hand was empty. Over the next few weeks, Sienna started acting different. She couldn't pinpoint what had changed about me. I was still going to work, still talking about the projects, still saying the right things. But something was off. A half-second delay before I answered her questions. A distance in my eyes she couldn't close. So she did what Sienna always did when she felt the mark drifting. She became the wife I always wanted. She cooked dinner. She never cooked. Bought groceries. Lit candles. Made something with garlic and white wine that actually smelled incredible. She planned a weekend trip. Just us. A bed and breakfast upstate. No phones. She asked about my day and actually listened, or performed listening so well I almost couldn't tell the difference. One night, lying in bed, she pressed her face into my shoulder and whispered, "I feel like I'm losing you and I don't know why. Please don't give up on us." The tears were real. The trembling was real. But the fear underneath wasn't about losing me. It was about losing the con. I almost believed her anyway. For one unbearable moment, I looked at her and saw the woman who showed up at my building site in heels and a blazer. The woman who told me I was thinking too small. The woman I married because she made me feel like I could be more than a guy with drywall dust in his hair. What if this version of her was real? What if I was wrong about everything? The next morning, she was in the shower. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. I glanced at it. Text from Tyler. 3 words. "Is he in yet?" Sent 2 hours ago. She forgot to delete it. I put the phone back exactly where it was. Went to the kitchen. Poured a glass of water. Drank it slowly. I thought about my mother in a thin blanket telling me she was proud. The doubt was dead. I made coffee, asked Sienna if she wanted eggs, left for the job site, smiled at her the way I always did. And that evening, while she was showing a condo across town, I sat in our home office and photographed every invoice she'd submitted in the past month. In my last life, Sienna handled the books. She created phantom invoices, contractors who didn't exist, materials that were never ordered, labor charges for work that was never done, thousands of dollars flowing to a shell company I now recognized as Tyler's. She was doing it again. Same invoices, same companies, same amounts. She had no reason to change the playbook. She didn't know I was watching. This time I let her run. Every phantom invoice she submitted was another page in the prosecution's file. I kept a parallel set of records, real contractor costs next to Sienna's numbers. The gap was enormous. Tens of thousands already diverted. I photographed everything, cross-referenced everything, gave copies to Harper every week. There was a part of me that hated it, watching her steal from me and doing nothing, letting the bleeding continue because every drop was evidence. It felt like lying face down while someone picked my pockets, except I was counting every bill they took, but I'd learned something in my first life. Confrontation feels good for 5 minutes and costs you everything. Patience feels like dying, but it builds a case that can't be torn down. So I let the invoices pile up, let the money flow, let Sienna think she was winning. And every night, I backed up the evidence to 3 separate drives. The first thing I cut was the books. I hired an accountant, a real one, recommended by Harper. Told Sienna it was to free her up. "You're already juggling your clients in the house," I said. "Let someone else handle the boring stuff," she smiled. Said it was a great idea, squeezed my hand. But I watched her eyes when she thought I wasn't looking. The smile didn't reach them. Within an hour, she'd texted Tyler. I didn't need to see the message. I knew what it said. The pipeline was closing. A professional accountant would flag every phantom invoice on site. The shell companies, the padded bills, the contractors who didn't exist, all of it would surface the moment someone competent opened the books. Sienna couldn't object without explaining why she needed access to financial records she had no reason to touch. I'd framed the move as kindness. That was the part that made it stick. She couldn't refuse a gift without revealing it wasn't one she wanted. The money stopped flowing that week. 2 weeks later, Tyler did what predators do when the easy path closes. He reached for the backup tool. He ran a credit check on Grace Cole. In my first life, this was the lever. The co-signer on the duplex loan. The mother who could be squeezed when the sun wouldn't break. Tyler had used it before, not just on me, on other developers. Find the person they love. Apply pressure there. The results came back empty. Grace Cole was not listed on any active loan. Zero liability, zero exposure. I pictured Tyler staring at that screen, the name he expected to see, the name that was supposed to be his insurance policy and wasn't there. In my first life, he used my mother like a crowbar, pried me open with the threat of what would happen to her if I didn't cooperate. When I still couldn't pay, he followed through, took her savings, took her apartment, left her in a shelter with a thin blanket and a cough that turned into pneumonia. Not this time. I wasn't there when he read the report, but I know the feeling. That cold, disorienting moment when a tool you've always relied on doesn't work. Like reaching for a wrench and finding an empty hook on the wall. He didn't understand when or how it happened. The first thing I did after waking up was call that bank. Months before Tyler even thought to check, the bomb under my mother was already defused. She didn't know. She didn't need to know. She just needed to be safe. Tyler couldn't come at me directly without revealing his hand. So he told Sienna to get closer. Find out what changed. She tried. More dinners. More questions about my day. But the charm offensive had already failed. She was running the same plays and I was watching them from behind the curtain. It was like watching someone try to pick a lock they didn't know I'd already changed. Meanwhile, Harper was pulling threads. She'd been tracing Tyler's shell company through public records, corporate filings, foreclosure histories, court documents. She was thorough in a way that scared me, and I mean that as a compliment. The kind of thorough that comes from watching your father lose everything and deciding no one else should. What she found changed the scope of everything. The same corporate entity, or close variations of it, appeared in 4 other foreclosure cases over the past decade. Different names, same structure, same result. Small developers who grew fast, took Tyler's money, and lost everything when the loans were called. Tyler had been running this con for years. I wasn't his first victim. I wasn't even close to his worst. Some of them lost more than buildings. One lost a marriage, another lost a house with children still in it. All of them small, all of them self-made, all of them trusting. Harper brought the findings to me on a Tuesday night. She laid the documents across her desk. 4 cases, 4 families, the same shell company structure threading through everyone like rot through a wall. Her voice was tight. This isn't a one-time thing, she said. He's a machine. I noticed she'd stopped calling Tyler the opposing party. She was calling him this man now. Something in her had shifted. The case wasn't abstract anymore. She didn't know yet that the machine had eaten her father's printing shop. That connection was still buried under a decade of name changes and restructured entities. But it was there, in the filings, waiting. And she was getting closer every day. I let her work. This was her expertise, not mine. I built buildings. She built cases. But I could still build traps. I called Tyler and told him I wanted to expand. Bigger project. A commercial building in a better neighborhood. The kind of deal that would make real money. I sounded excited, eager, a little starstruck. The same version of Liam that Tyler thought he was dealing with. Tyler's eyes lit up. I could hear it in his voice. More money, more exposure, more properties to foreclose on when the time came. He sent a new contract within 48 hours. Harper rewrote it the same night. Same protections, same defanged terms. Tyler's lawyers skimmed it. They always skimmed. The first deal had gone smoothly. Why would the second be different? He signed. I signed. We shook hands over lunch and Tyler told me this was the beginning of something big. He was right, just not in the way he meant. 2 contracts now, both modified, both evidence of a pattern. 1 contract might be a dispute, 2 contracts with identical, predatory structures prove intent. Tyler thought he was expanding his hold. He was deepening his grave. I went home that night and sat in the kitchen with the lights off. Sienna was out, showing a property, she said, probably with Tyler. I didn't check. It didn't matter anymore. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired, the kind of tired that settles in your hands and won't come out, like you've been gripping a hammer all day and your fingers forgot how to open. The performance was wearing on me, smiling at the man who killed my mother, kissing the woman who helped him do it, sitting across from both of them at dinners and playing the grateful husband while my phone recorded, and my lawyer built the case that would bury them. Every day was a renovation I couldn't rush. Tear out the rot, replace it clean. Don't cut corners or the whole thing comes down. But the walls were going up, and the foundation, for the first time in 2 lifetimes, was solid. I took my mother to see the apartment on a Sunday. It was in a building I'd renovated myself, a small 4-unit that I bought clean. No investors, no Tyler. I'd rewired the electrical, replaced the windows, sanded the hardwood floors until they glowed. The apartment was on the 2nd floor. Good light, cross breeze in the summer. Close to her old neighborhood, close to the bus line she'd ridden for 30 years. I told her I'd gotten a deal on it. I didn't tell her I owned the building. Grace walked through the room slowly. She touched the kitchen counter with her palm, opened the window over the sink and leaned into the breeze, turned on the faucet and let it run for a few seconds like she was testing whether the water was real. The light is good in here, she said. I could grow herbs on that sill. She didn't cry. She didn't make a speech. She just nodded the way she did when something was right. A small, steady nod, like a foundation settling into place. I helped her move in over the next 2 days. Most of what she owned fit in the back of my truck. When we were unpacking boxes in the living room, she found the framed photo, the selfie from the duplex, mother and son, sawdust and sunshine. She held it for a moment, then hung it on the wall above the couch. She stepped back and looked at it. That was the happiest day of my life, she she said. I was standing behind her. She couldn't see my face, which was good because I couldn't hold it together. In another life, that building was a wedding venue. Tyler and Sienna clinked champagne glasses in the lobby I'd renovated with my hands, on a floor my mother had helped me pay for. And Grace was dead in a shelter 6 months before the photo was taken. This time the photo was on her wall, in a warm apartment, in a building her son built. I excused myself to the bathroom and stood there with my hands on the sink, staring at the drain. Some things you can't renovate, you just build new. 2 nights later, Harper called me. Her voice was different. Not professional, not sharp, quiet. In a way I hadn't heard before, like the words were too heavy to carry at normal volume. I found something, she said. She'd been tracing Tyler's shell company through another layer of name changes. The corporate entity from 12 years ago, the one that ran the predatory scheme on a small printing business. It was the same structure, same filing agent, same registered address, different name. The printing shop was owned by a man named David Chen, her father. I drove to her office. She was sitting at her desk, with the documents spread out in front of her, not reading them, just staring. The pen was on the desk instead of behind her ear. That was how I knew. He took my father's shop, she said. Her voice was barely there. I was 15. We lost the house the same month. My mother worked 2 jobs for 3 years to keep us in an apartment. She looked up at me. Her eyes were red but dry, not crying, past crying. In that place where the grief has hardened into something else. I recognized the look. I'd worn it for years. I didn't say I'm sorry. I didn't say I understand. I sat across from her in silence. After a long beat, I said, "Tell me about the shop." Her expression cracked, just a little. Not at the loss, at the question. Nobody had asked her about the shop. They asked about the foreclosure. They asked about the debt. They asked about her career path and why she chose property law. Nobody asked about the shop itself, she told me. The smell of the ink, the sound of the presses, the way her father's hands were always stained blue at dinner, the bell above the door that rang every time a customer walked in. We sat in her office until past midnight, not talking about the case, not talking about contracts or shell companies or evidence, just talking. At some point, the conversation shifted back. It always does. "You knew these contracts were predatory before you brought them to me," she said. "You didn't need a lawyer to tell you that." I was quiet for a moment. "I needed someone I could trust," I said. She held my gaze. "You're still married." I know. The line was there, clear as a property boundary. Neither of us crossed it, but we both knew where it was. And we both knew we were standing close. I left her office and sat in my truck for a while. I thought about Sienna, how she made me feel like I could be more, and Harper, how she made me feel like I was already enough. The difference was everything. Everything collapsed in the same week. Tyler found out first. His lawyers finally read the modified contracts, really read them, and called him in a panic. The lien clauses weren't there. The foreclosure rights didn't exist. The call-in provision, gone. Replaced with a 90-day written notice requirement and an arbitration clause. He'd signed it himself, both contracts. His own arrogance. He never imagined a guy with drywall dust on his hands would hire a lawyer who could rewrite his weapons. He panicked, filed a fraudulent lien on my newest property, tried to call in obligations early, sloppy, desperate. The same week Sienna found the call log, she found a printed call log in my office. Calls to Harper Chen, the bank, the accountant. Dates going back months. She didn't confront me. She filed for divorce the next morning. Emergency petition. Her lawyers moved for an immediate asset freeze on my portfolio. The play, grab half before the fraud case could complicate things. 2 attacks, same week. Tyler's lien from one side, Sienna's freeze from the other. In my first life, this is where I broke. No lawyer, no evidence, no plan. This time I called Harper. She was quiet for 3 seconds. Then, good, let them come. They're going to run into each other. Tyler needed the properties. Sienna needed the money. Their claims competed. His lien conflicted with her freeze. The partnership that worked when they were stealing together fell apart the moment they fought over the scraps. The court date came fast. Harper walked into that courtroom with a case file 3 inches thick and the calm of someone who'd been building toward this for months. She started with the dinner recording. Tyler's own voice from the very first dinner, describing his investment model. His own words. Recorded before any contract was signed. Tyler's lawyers objected. The recording was admitted. Then the contracts. Harper laid them side by side. Tyler's original terms and the version he'd actually signed. His legal team had built their entire case on terms that didn't exist in the signed documents. Their strategy collapsed on the courtroom floor. Then the financials, phantom invoices, shell companies, the money trail from Sienna's books to Tyler's accounts, every dollar documented. Then, the other victims, 4 of them, same story, same structure. A plumber who lost 3 rental properties, a woman who built a contracting firm from scratch and watched Tyler take it in 8 months. Each one had the same look, someone who thought they were alone in their loss and just found out they weren't. Tyler's face went from confident to confused to gray. The buddy and brother were gone. What was left was a man born into money, who couldn't hold on to it, watching self-made people explain how he'd robbed them. Then Sienna took the stand. She'd made her calculation. She always made calculations. That was the one thing about her that never changed. Her lawyers told her cooperation would reduce her exposure. Tyler was going down regardless. The only question was whether she went with him. She chose herself, like she always did. Under oath, she admitted the marriage was a business arrangement. She described the plan: marry Liam, gain access to the finances, divert funds to Tyler's accounts, position Tyler to foreclose. She admitted the phantom invoices. She admitted the prenup refusal was strategic. She'd expected half of everything in the divorce. But all of my new properties were acquired after I'd started documenting the fraud. All in my name. Clean titles. The no prenup move she'd made to steal more was the exact thing that left her with nothing. Standard property division applied. She got zero. She played herself, and she did it under oath, on the record, for the court to see. Tyler watched from the defense table as the woman who ran the con with him for years took it apart piece by piece to save herself. Whatever was left between them died in that courtroom. I sat in the gallery. I didn't testify. I didn't speak. Harper had built the case so thoroughly that my voice wasn't needed. My silence was the loudest thing in the room. Tyler was convicted. Serial fraud, predatory lending, multiple counts. Sienna's cooperation reduced her charges, but her name was in every filing, every headline. The career, the reputation, the image she'd built on the back of my buildings, gone. The divorce was finalized in the same week. I kept everything, not because I fought for it, because she handed it to me from the witness stand. Months passed. I visited Grace on a Tuesday. Her apartment smelled like basil. The herbs on the windowsill had taken off. The photo was still on the wall. She was making too much food, as always. She asked if I was eating. She asked twice. I sat at her kitchen table and ate. Then I drove to Harper's office. She was at her desk, pen behind her ear. The case files were boxed up in the corner. Done, closed, finished. She looked up when I walked in. Case is closed, she said. I know. So, why are you here? I leaned against the doorframe. Because you're the expert, and I think I need help with something that isn't in the fine print. She smiled, full, warm. The first time I'd ever seen her smile without the professional wall behind it. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. A few months later, I was on the roof of a building I was renovating. Sawdust on my jeans, coffee in my hand. My phone buzzed. Text from Harper. I read it once. Smiled. Texted back in 30 seconds. In another life, a text from a woman I trusted destroyed everything. This time, I didn't need to read it 3 times. I didn't need to decode it, or record it, or check it against what I already knew. The foundation was solid. The building was sound. And for the first time in 2 lifetimes, I wasn't bracing for the walls to come down.